Last November, it was considered a major milestone for Republicans that in Florida, they finally overtook Democrats in total registered voters. As of April 1st, it is being reported that Florida voter registration, Republicans overtake Democrats by 100,000. But it's not just about the state of Florida, which is now very clearly a red state. It's about Miami-Dade County. Once a Democrat stronghold, a blue district is now slowly turning Republican. Democrats are jumping ship, registering as Republicans, and many independent voters are registering as Republicans as well. Now, I like to cite many of these polls showing that when it comes to sentiment on issues like critical race theory, wokeness, policy, taxes, etc., independent voters tend to lean toward Republican. And I wonder why that is. One of the most important bits of data in this is news consumption. We've seen the polls in the past. Liberal or Democrat voters tend to exclusively get their information from corporate press, left-leaning outlets. Independent voters, it's 2-1. 60% or so comes from mainstream press, and about 30 to 40% comes from conservative outlets. And among conservatives, it's inverted. About 60% comes from conservative sources, and about 30 to 40% comes from left-leaning sources. That is to say, independent voters and Republican voters have a mixed news consumption diet, but Democrats typically only get their information from Democrat sources. I think this is what's actually changing the game. More and more grassroots efforts among post-liberal, civil libertarian, conservative individuals to talk about what's really going on, the problems facing our country. Sure, there are many people who are still trapped in the lies of the corporate press, but as more and more people realize what's happening to this country, as more and more of their questions go unanswered, it seems like regular people are starting to jump ship and switch over to the Republican Party. It is not just in Florida. We're basically seeing it across the board. It is not just white working class voters. As what does The Intercept call it? The Intercept says it's not just white people. Democrats are losing normal voters of all races. I don't know what they intend to what they mean by normal voters of all races, but yeah. They say Democrats fear they're losing white swing voters over racial politics. 3 studies suggest that the party's elite culture may be the real problem. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's what the Daily Beast says. Democrats keep confusing Twitter for the real world. Winning votes is the name of the game, but liberals keep pushing unpopular policies to chase the cool kids' likes. I think that's it. I think that really does explain it. And I also think it's serious desperation. Not only have we seen 11 staffers quit Kamala Harris's the Biden administration under Kamala Harris, 31 Democrats are retiring, and we're seeing a whole bunch of these impeachment Republicans retiring, with Liz Cheney apparently now desperately begging Democrats for help, because that's what you are. It's not about the Democratic Party. It is about the establishment, uniparty, garbage foreign policy, and corruption, the likes of which is exemplified by the Biden family. And these ignorant people who do not pay attention voted in one of the most crooked, corrupt, inept politicians we've ever seen in Joe Biden. It's all plain to see for anyone who reads the news, the documents, the sworn affidavits, the statements from Biden himself about his illicit dealings, uncovering the lies. Oh, I don't talk to my son about work. And then the famous photograph showing Joe Biden with Hunter Biden and his business associates, and questions about who is the big guy. But let's talk about one of the big reasons I think Democrats are losing. They keep chasing after insane culture war politics in the wrong direction. How could it be that we are here? Democrat Senator Durbin objects to Republican legislation seeking tougher sentences for people who abuse children. Somehow, Democrats have been pushed into a corner where they're outright supporting people who abuse children. For what reason? You're not going to win votes with that. Perhaps it's all on principle. Okay, if the Democrats of the party have principled protection of people who abuse children, You're barking up the wrong tree. But that's apparently what's happening. But let's see exactly what's happening. Let's take a look at the polls, take a look at the registration numbers, and let's talk about how, once again, we are seeing Democrats continually quitting the party in huge numbers, and we'll talk about why that is. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support my work and the work of all of our journalists. And as a member, you will get access to exclusive episodes of the Timcast IRL podcast, which goes up Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. with all of our guests, uncensored. Not very family friendly, but it's with your support we will continue to expand this company, make new shows, hire new people, and we are eternally grateful. So don't forget, smash the like button. Give us a good review if you're listening on the podcast. Leave us 5 stars. Share the show with your friends. Tell them about it. It really does help. Now, let's get into that first story from Epoch Times. They say as of August 23rd, as the August 23rd Florida primary draws near, data released by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis shows there are 100,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats in the Sunshine State. In November 2021, DeSantis announced that Florida, where Democrats held an advantage over Republicans of well over 260,000 votes when he took office in 2019, saw a net gain of over 300,000 new Republican voters. On February 28th, the Florida Department of State reported that there were 5,135,377 registered Republicans and 5,045,849 registered Democrats, a difference of 89,528, according to new data released by the governor's office. The difference is now a staggering 101,076. More startling is the revelation that the historically blue stronghold of Miami-Dade County is losing Democratic voters. As of April 1st, there were 585,882 registered Democrats compared to 427,000 Republicans. That is a loss of more than 9,000 votes, as they previously had 594,924 in total. A tumble of nearly 41,000 from the total registered Democrats in Miami-Dade as of 2020. They go to mention, in Hernando County, where Republicans have traditionally held the majority, the number of registered Democrats has fallen to third place below Republicans and others for the first time in its nearly 180-year history. Florida was the number 1 relocation destination for Americans in 2020, as the Epoch Times reported on June 9th. We have this story from Politico, the milestone moment. Republicans officially overtake Democrats in Florida. The change has been happening for some time, and we are seeing a persistent switch as people say they no longer want to be Democrats and they now want to be Republicans, as exemplified in this story from the Nevada Independent. Update. Trend continued in March of more Democrats switching to GOP. Why could that be? Update as of April 1st. Democrat to Republican, 508. Republican to Democrat, 152. Democrat to nonpartisan, 765. Republican to nonpartisan, 404. Nonpartisan to Democrat, 838. And nonpartisan to GOP, 1,036. Across the board, you have people quitting the Democratic Party and becoming Republicans. You have more people joining the Republican Party, less people leaving the Republican Party. I do not believe, my friends, the Republicans have all the answers. But I believe a lot of people are starting to look at the Democrats and they're starting to think these people are insane. But this persistent switch is persistent and consistent. It is telling. And it is indicative of the hard work by many activists. Notably, the persistence himself, Scott Pressler, who tweeted March 30th, "We did it," saying, in August 2021, the Democrats had an advantage of 2,779 voter registrations in Pinellas County, Florida. Today, Republicans have a lead of 2,800. That's a flip of 5,579 voters. Our voter registration efforts are flipping counties from blue to red across the country. Scott Pressler is not the only person who is engaged in the practice of registering voters, but he is one of the most prominent and persistent individuals seeking to register voters. And not only that, dude's cleaning up trash. This dude went around cleaning up garbage in cities. And he was accused, the media was like, he's just trying to score votes for Republicans. And my response is just like, oh no, geez. The Republicans are cleaning up trash in impoverished parts of major cities. They've tricked us. Oh no, really? You mean you've got a bunch of Republicans going up and cleaning up your city and you're mad about it? That is twisted and insane. A bunch of Republicans show up and they say, we want to show people that we're willing to put in the work to clean up these cities and help people. So we're going to clean up these cities and help people. And you're like, how dare you? You, Democrats, you left these cities in disarray. And now you're angry that Republicans saw an opportunity to clean the cities up? Talk about insane. This is why, in my opinion, Republicans are starting to do better. Now, Scott, on his Twitter, just shows all of the major gains that Republicans are getting. It's really amazing. Democrats are losing. The lead is narrowing. Republicans are gaining across the board in Philadelphia. Voter registration in many different states. Great news in this Twitter thread from Scott Pressler. Now, I don't think Republicans have all the answers. I certainly think you can see it reflected in the independent vote as to why Republicans are growing, that people have a growing disdain for Democrats and independent voters. Where you need to see real opportunity. There is something particularly interesting in the data. If you want to register someone to be a Republican, they can't already be a Republican. They can be a Democrat. They could be independent. But Democrats typically don't want to be Republicans, though we are seeing that switch in relatively small numbers, but large enough to make a dent. Take a look at this from Civics, a poll. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the Republican Party? We have seen since January 2021, there has been a slight increase. Now, to be fair, at the end of October, there was a major drop from Election Day to January 6th, with favorability sinking for Republicans among independents. It was fairly high, around 23, 27, 28%. And unfavorable for the Republican Party spiked around the same time. In the past few months, favorability for Republicans among independents has ticked up a few points to 21%, and unfavorable has dropped down to 60%. Here's where it gets interesting. Do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party? Well, the unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party among independents has been fairly static, around 60 or so percent, but recently spiked to 68%, now sitting at 67%. And favorable among independent voters to the Democratic Party has dropped, now sitting down around 21%. That is to say, independents are viewing Democrats less favorably, and they're viewing Republicans slightly more favorably. Now, the favorable number is the same, but unfavorable is higher among Democrats. Independents are less likely to independent voters are more likely to say they have an unfavorable view of the Democrats. The difference, 12% are unsure. This is the growth territory for Republicans. 19% of independents are not sure. That means you have an opportunity to convince these people to support the Republican Party. Not that it is a key to solving all the problems, but just that, in my opinion, the Democrats are insane, substantially worse than Republicans. You know, Republicans are speed bumps. What we need are America First populist Republicans of sound and, in my opinion, relatively moderate but aggressive tactics. You know, I don't want some crazy ultra-traditionalist. No, we just want someone who's going to be like gun rights, secure them. Get this weird woke stuff out of there. That's not far right. That's just like American moderate positioning. That's why we're seeing this happen. I love this article from The Intercept back in November 15th. Ryan Grimm writes, last Monday, a Democratic firm hosted focus groups with women in Virginia who voted in 2017 for Democratic Governor Ralph Northam. In 2020, for Democratic President Joe Biden. And then this month, for Republican Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin, who is now the governor. It was centered on suburban women. Consultant Danny Barefoot said that Anvil Strategies called roughly 30,000 people in Virginia. Most didn't answer, but several hundred of them fit the criteria he was looking for. People who voted Democrat who voted Democrat, Republican in the last 3 elections. Those people were called back and offered a $100 gift card if they do a lunch hour Zoom and talk about why they voted the way they did. 96 women, a fifth of whom were not white, were broken into 3 different sessions. Barefoot sat in on one of them and got permission from the funders to share quotes. Focus groups are put together, blah, blah, blah. What Barefoot found is that while the women agreed with Democrats on policy, they just didn't connect with them. When asked which party had better policy proposals, the group members overwhelmingly said Democrats. But when asked which party had cultural values closer to theirs, they cited Republicans. Democrats embracing the overt abuse of children, I will not tolerate. I will not placate, defend, diminish. You can shove off, my friends. Special shout out to Robbie Suave. Robbie is a libertarian personality who consistently has strange takes on big issues. He tweeted the people who are, against the Florida bill, who are saying parents, our students shouldn't know about their teachers' private lives are weird or something to that effect. I'm like, dude, did you even read the bill? It's just such a lazy take. No one is complaining about that. I don't want my kids to know about whether my teacher has a side job or is married. What? First of all, teachers don't need to talk about their private lives with the kids. And it is better they keep that stuff private because they're authority figures. But I don't care if a teacher has a picture of their husband, wife, gay or straight or otherwise. The concern is whether they're engaging in classroom instruction on adult matters for 5 to 9-year-olds and then telling the kids not to tell their parents. That's the problem. And people see it. Take a look at this story from today. Democrat Senator Dick Durbin took to the Senate floor on Tuesday to oppose Republican legislation that would create tougher punishment for child offenders. Why? Why? I don't understand. I seriously don't. Did you think getting up there and saying that you want leniency for people abusing children was going to garner any favor for anybody in the American public? Most of the American public says if you abuse kids, are found guilty, lock them up, throw away the key. Some people even call for the death penalty. And you thought going up there and being like, we need to help them and let these people go. Are you nuts? The recidivism rate for these people is through the roof. I am all about rehabilitation. But when it comes to kids, I pretty much draw the line there. I think there are many people in this country who need to spend more time in prison and many people in this country who should be spending less time in prison. Nonviolent drug offenses? Yo, come on, house arrest. Nonviolent? Now, we're talking about violent offenses against children. You go Supermax. We lock you up and say, we don't want you harming our kids. Children are our future. Here we go. Bask in the glory, Democrats. This is your party. Last week, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley introduced the PROTECT Act of 2022, which aims to protect children from exploitation by enhancing the penalties for possessing images of children in disgusting ways, and by preventing judges from sentencing offenders below federal guidelines. And the reason he did is because Democrats are all in favor, and some Republicans, of supporting Ketanji Brown Jackson, who continually and repeatedly is lenient towards people who abuse children. The bill is co-sponsored by Senators Mike Lee, Rick Scott, and Tom Tillis. Speaking on the Senate floor, Durbin said these guidelines don't reflect the reality of today. We now live in a world of internet access to thousands of images, if that's your decision. Durbin argued the laws were created to address physical materials like videotapes. Since the internet is flooded with images of abuse, he does not believe the same punishments should apply. Why? You're saying because it's easier now to access a material of children being exploited in insane and disgusting ways, you would want to lower the penalty for having these things? Yo, we said, here are the guidelines for possessing these materials when it was hard to get them. Now it's easier to get them, meaning we need to increase the penalties. And he wants to decrease the penalties? They are overtly protecting people who want to abuse children. No questions about it. Let me just lay out the logic very simply one more time. Please just think about this. It was very difficult in the past, relatively, to get access to these materials. And so we were like, you should spend X amount of time in prison if you have large quantities of these materials, knowing that it was less likely because it was hard for people to come by these things. Through technology, it has become easier. That means more people will try to exploit the system and gain more access. Well, the response should be, as it gets easier and people seek to continue and expand upon the exploitation of children, we should increase the penalties because it is now easier for them to engage in this behavior, this criminal behavior. What are the Democrats saying? No, 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 no. Reduce the guidelines. Look at Florida. We don't want teachers engaging in classroom instruction, that's the specific language, on adult matters with 5 to 9-year-olds. And we don't want them keeping it a secret from parents. And the Democrats oppose that bill. Quote, by federal statute, judges are required to sentence criminals within ranges set by federal sentencing guidelines. The statement continued. In 2003, Congress passed the original PROTECT Act to curtail the exceptions and enhance penalties for exploitation of children. The senator's office explained, the Supreme Court gutted the PROTECT Act in 2005. Quote, the horror of exploitation is exponentially worse than it was a decade ago. And judges handing out lenient sentences for these criminals is a big reason why, said Senator Hawley. While the White House continues to dismiss concerns about leniency as a desperate conspiracy theory, the numbers speak for themselves. Hawley is correct. Ketanji Brown Jackson said, nah, we're gonna go lax. She was like, if somebody accessed this stuff for even 15 minutes, they could get 50 years. And I'm like, and? The question is criminal behavior. Now, what we got to be careful of is protecting the innocent. There have been instances, Alex Jones was involved in a very serious incident where someone apparently sent him horrifying images. And then they tried to claim it was his fault. No, he was cleared of any wrongdoing. What we don't want is someone to open up their email and then be like, whoa, and then have someone try and claim they possessed it. But that's not the criminal action. The criminal action is for people who are seeking out, participating in, downloading this kind of stuff. Exploitation of children. For some reason, they're trying to give people, they're trying to make it easier. Lose your votes. Lose your voters. Do what you want to do. Take a look at this one. Longtime Michigan GOP rep Fred Upton announces his retirement. We have this tweet from Scott Pressler. Another one bites the dust. Fred Upton, Republican from Michigan, who voted to impeach Trump, is retiring. You've got John Katko, Fred Upton, Adam Kinzinger, Anthony Gonzalez. Bye. These people wanted to vote out Trump. Well, now they know they're going to lose, and it's over for them. Liz Cheney turns to Democrats to save her hide. The math doesn't lie, and neither do Cheney's actions on the ground in recent months. Do you think, Liz Cheney, that you're going to get reelected? In 2007, in this blue bastion of one of the reddest states in the country, liberal activists wheeled out a giant statue of Dick Cheney through the town to protest his star role in the Iraq War, before toppling it Saddam Hussein style. 15 years later, his daughter, Rep. Liz Cheney, is turning to the same rare species in Wyoming, Democrats, to save her House seat. And Trumpist Republicans are doing everything in their power to thwart her. The turnabout for Cheney, one of the most unlikely twists in Republican politics in recent years, in a party that's had no shortage of them, will come into sharp relief next week at a gathering at Jackson Center, blah, 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 blah. I don't care about the nitty gritty. I care about the point that she is turning to Democrats. What Cheney doesn't know until now is that a band of Trump-loving Republicans will be on hand to greet her. They snapped up a quarter of the tickets. She is not going to be reelected, Bextel vowed. Bextel may be correct. Though there's been scant public polling of her primary campaign against Trump-backed Harriet Hageman, it's apparent that Republicans in Wyoming, which voted for Trump over Joe Biden, have turned against Cheney en masse since January 6th. Because Cheney is a uniparty establishment, disgusting individual. She is one of the worst people in politics, and I look forward to history writing her name in the history books as a failed, disgusting, corrupt politician. She's just one of the worst. So is Adam Kinzinger. So is Adam Schiff. All of these people. Now, you know what? History books, whatever. Doing what's right is what matters. And these people aren't doing what's right. The January 6th committee is exploiting the power of the federal government to target their political rivals. It's gross. It really is. But they can now reap what they sow. The Morning Consult says, the culture war has Democrats facing electoral demise in rural America. Can they stop the bleeding? New survey of rural voters shows what's driving the party increasingly barren showings and potential avenues for recovery. Yeah, cultural issues. Y'all have lost it. From Pew, party affiliation among voters 92 to 2016. I showed this because typically Democrats have had a major lead across the board in a variety of ways. Going into 2016 among women, they've had the lead. And now things are actually starting to shift, especially with the generic ballot, the generic polling for the upcoming midterm elections, favoring Republicans. Here we go. Pew says, Republicans more likely than Democrats to say partisan control of Congress really matters. Because I think Democrats have checked out. 71% of Republican voters say their vote for Congress is against Biden. If the Republicans win, if you go out in your primaries, if you register, if you tell your friends to register in and vote in the primaries and the local elections, you can impeach Joe Biden, which needs to happen. Here's where we're at. Billionaire investor Ray Dalio warns soaring inflation under Biden will send America back to the 1970s. We're going to have a period of stagflation. Oh, yeah. It'll be bad. It's already bad. I went to the grocery store and I bought a bunch of groceries and it was just insanely expensive. I couldn't believe it. I'm not kidding, man. Every week I go to the grocery store, it's just the prices are going up and it's nuts. They're only going to go up. Regular people can see this. How about this story? Black Lives Matter secretly bought a $6 million house. Allies and critics alike have questioned where the organization's money has gone. They ripped you all off. And this is making people wake up for sure. Oh, here we go. I love this story. Has Joe Biden been pulled into Hunter grand jury probe? Witness is asked to identify the big guy who would get kickback in deal with Chinese energy giant after former associate claimed it was the president. I wonder who it is. I wonder who flew Hunter Biden on a plane to China for a private equity deal. Was it Joe? Was he using Air Force Two to bring his son to China for a private equity deal? This dude has ripped you all off. This is where we're at. So many people voted for what may be one of the most corrupt administrations in history. Why? Because the media said the orange man was bad. I hope it was worth it. I hope all of these Biden voters come home looking at their paycheck and looking at the cost of their groceries and say, what have I done? I hope these people remember it when they go and vote in November. Many of these people are just in a cult. They don't care about principle or policy or economics. They just want you to suffer. That's what they want. They want to win. Well, they've lost. Because at a certain point, when people say, yo, I can't afford gas anymore. Under Trump, it was at least around $2 on average. I'm not going to give Trump the credit for what happened during the pandemic because that was a weird thing. Demand for gas was so low because no one was driving during the height of the pandemic that gas prices or oil prices went negative. This brought gas prices down below $2 a gallon. For a lot of people, it was really, really good news. But a lot of people weren't working, so it's not all Trump's, Trump doesn't get all the credit for that. But on average, through the Trump presidency, gas is around $2.30 or so. Now it's over $4. Certainly people are going to be like, dude, I can't afford to drive to work anymore. Maybe we need remote work. A lot of people are calling for that, but that's mostly big city types. For people who live out in the suburbs, all these suburban housewives, you voted for this. Congratulations. You reap what you've sown. You get what you ask for, and you get what you deserve. And this is what you deserve if you voted for Joe Biden. I'm willing to bet that a lot of people who voted for Trump prepared, either buying emergency food, water, or investing their US dollars in something like crypto or just some harder asset. And the people who voted for Joe Biden were like, we're going to see the Biden boom. And the media kept saying, Biden boom, baby. And the economy is in shambles. And we're being warned by this billionaire. It's going to get worse. Stagflation, inflation, and shrinkflation. There's going to be no growth. You're going to see the size of your groceries shrink, but the boxes will stay the same size. How about that? Compare the ounces. Every day you go to the grocery store, when you buy a box of cereal, whatever you buy, take a picture of the amount of the net weight, and then come back and do it. And then you'll watch the number tick, 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 shrinkflation. The boxes get bigger, the food gets smaller. Thanks, Joe Biden. I love what they're trying to do. There are stickers they're putting up on gas pumps that shows Putin riding on the back of a scooter with Trump, and it says, we did that. Yeah, sorry, it doesn't fly. Under Donald Trump, gas was cheap. You want to blame Trump and Putin? That makes no sense. Vladimir Putin sells gas. We were a net exporter under Trump. The desperation is palpable. And they should take all the blame. The people who voted for Joe Biden. Well, now we're seeing it. Democrat voters are jumping ship. It's been an ongoing trend for the past year or so. Let's see how this plays out in November. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all then.